So, good evening and welcome to Chew Tonight. I'm Jill Kendall. I am going to be talking about how to get off of sugar addiction tonight. Okay, so what kind of foods can we eat to get off of sugar addiction? So, before I proceed, I want to make it very clear to everyone I am not a dietitian nor am I a registered nutritionist. I have been working in the health and fitness industry for 12 years, successfully as a personal trainer. I am a CanFit Pro trainer for healthy eating and weight loss coaching. So let's get started. I really want to be clear to people that you have two options. The truth of the matter is, in order to get off of a sugar addiction, you've got to find your right way to actually quit this addiction. This addiction is a real hormonal and chemical addiction, and it's also a social one. Sometimes we just eat food that tastes really great and sugary because it's there. There's birthday celebrations, cake's there. So we're like, yeah, sure, I'll have a piece. And then next thing we know, we're starting to have ice cream and maybe some candies and some chocolate. And then that goes into day over day muffins and different things. So two things that you can do. You can either choose to go cold turkey, or you can slowly wean yourself off and wait for your palate to adjust. So tonight I'm going to talk about slowly weaning your palate off. If you want to go cold turkey, I would suggest going to www.dietdoctor.com. I will also be posting that in the comments. They're a great resource because basically anybody who's going cold turkey on sugar and simple carbs, you're doing keto. So they're the keto and high fat, low carb experts, and that's again dietdoctor.com. Amazing resource. It's run by doctors, so again, it's a great resource to go to. I'm going to talk about doing a more slower way. So some people, they just don't want to do that, and that's valid. So if you just want to slowly change your lifestyle, then I would recommend picking one food at a time. Okay, so it could be coffee. If you are trying to reduce the sugar you're using in your coffee, then just reduce it by a small amount. So if you use 2 teaspoons, do a teaspoon and a half. Wait till your palate adapts and then go to a teaspoon and a quarter. And then wait for your palate to adapt and then go to a teaspoon and then do 3/4, then half. Wean yourself off of it. So this is something that you can do with any and all foods. Once you've eliminated the obvious ones, then you can start to replace foods. So one of the ways, if you start breakfast off and it's not a high carb meal, you're less likely to crave carbs. Part of the reason for this is when we first wake up, our insulin is relatively low. Whether we're eating carbohydrates or not, our insulin will gradually increase in production over the course of the day. So if you wake up in the morning and your insulin levels are low, and then you have a simple carb breakfast like cereal or toast and jam or toast and peanut butter or a fruit smoothie, then you're spiking your insulin level. What will happen is it'll start the sugar cycle. So your insulin's going to spike, and then at lunch you'll have a sandwich. It's going to spike again, so that at 3 o'clock you're feeling fatigued, tired, and you're craving a little something. Usually this is a sign of sugar addiction and possibly dehydration, because dehydration will cause the same thing. So, what I would strongly recommend is that if you start at the beginning of your day and figure out how to wean off of your carbs in the morning, your bagels, your toast, your cereals, and it could be start slow. If you're having cereal 5 days a week and then you're doing toast or pancakes on the weekend or bacon and eggs on the weekend, then try and do something where you're only having cereal every other day. Okay? Or change the type of cereal you're having. So if you're having something that's really high in sugar, and look at your ingredients, okay? If you're seeing a lot of sugars in there, or you're seeing that it's very high in sugars and carbs that you can't count for outside of the sugar and the fiber, then there's some hidden sugars in there. So if you're seeing something where you're at 4+ teaspoons of sugar per serving, then try a different cereal that's lower, okay? So like a whole grain Cheerios is quite low. It's 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar per serving. So that would be something to use in place of a cereal that's like Fiber One, which is closer to 5 or 6 teaspoons of sugar per serving. Okay, so switching to the whole grain cereal is definitely going to be better. Eventually, you might want to get completely off the cereals or even just have them every other day. So then you can start looking at having scrambled eggs. If you do something that's protein and fat based, you're going to be satiated and then you can move on to lunch. Okay. Now, some people, they're hardcore cereal people. Okay. They're not going to give it up or they're not going to give it up easy. So just switching the kind of cereal might be the best that they can get. If that's the case, look for your easy win. Maybe your easy win is lunch, okay? So tons of people talk to me about how their lunch is full of junk or it's processed or it's very sugary and that they always end up wanting something sweet in their break afterwards because they're hungry because lunch wasn't satiating. And I always tell them it's like, nothing said that lunch had to be a sandwich. Lunch could be a soup, but it doesn't even have to be a soup. One of my favorite versions of a lunch is taken from what they used to call a farmer's platter, which is just basically a whole bunch of raw vegetables with some boiled eggs, or you could do some cold meats. It could be chicken, could be beef. It doesn't have to be a processed or sliced sandwich meat. It could be just regular old meat, right? Like, yeah, you want it cooked, right? No raw stuff, unless it's sashimi and we're at a Japanese restaurant and it's professionally done. So we want to do raw vegetables, do a protein, but you don't even have to use meat. You could do a little piece of cheese. You could do a handful of almonds. You could do some pecans or walnuts, or heck, do a bunch of those. And you could do a whole bunch of different vegetables. You could do cucumbers and carrots, green peppers, red peppers, yellow peppers. Those mini peppers are super fun. Those mini cucumbers are super fun. Like, it doesn't have to be boring. You can do snow pea pods. There's all sorts of amazing vegetables out there that are fun to eat raw. The recommendation, though, is you want to make sure that you do a fat or a dip with them, a mayonnaise-based one. Make sure there's no sugar in it because you need a little bit of that fat with those raw vegetables to be satiated. Okay, and then a little bit of protein. It could be animal-based or plant-based, right? Heck, have some fun with it. Throw in a couple of olives. It doesn't have to be plain, but you'll find that it's fun, it's satiating, and then you're not craving that treat at 3 or 4 o'clock, right? Another way is if lunches are good, maybe you're already doing salads, maybe you're not having that treat, but it's like after dinner. I hear a lot of people tell me that after dinner, they're craving something sweet. And so they're used to having a muffin or a little bit of ice cream or, a small piece of chocolate. So I believe that everybody can eat anything that they want, but I also believe that sweets and chocolates are not meant to be eaten 365 days a year. They should be reserved for special occasions. I believe if we reserve our cakes, our sweets, our treats, our candies, all of those things for weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, special occasions, holiday celebrations, religious celebrations, that we will get back to a more balanced lifestyle where we can appreciate these things for what they are. They're supposed to be treats that we use, special occasion celebrations. So after dinner, I wouldn't have cookies or cakes or muffins or ice creams or any of those things. I would strongly recommend that if you're really craving the sweets and that's what you've been having, try berries. Okay? Switch to a fruit. If you have to, start with a super sweet fruit like a grape, okay? And then work down till you can get more into your berries. See, grapes are great, but they are nature's version of candy. They are so full of natural sugar, it is unbelievable. And if you are a sugar addict, this is just another version of your addiction, only it's in nature's wrapping instead of a plastic one. So be careful with your grapes. I'm not saying they're not healthy and don't eat them. I'm saying that, you know what, when they're in season, have a few of them. When they're not in season, don't bother with them. The fruits that you want to eat are usually the ones that are in season, and you want to eat them minimally. But if you're struggling with a sugar addiction, berries are a great way to get off that addiction. As your palate changes, so if you've been doing the lunch for a while or you've been doing the berries for a while, you will notice when you go to have sweets and treats that your palate has changed. It usually takes anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks for the first changes to happen. So just because you did it for a couple of days, don't go have a chocolate bar and be like, hey, it didn't change. It's like, come on, let's be reasonable. It's like going to take time for the palate to change. That's like your coffee. If you're reducing the sugar in it or the sweetness, or you've been using those flavored coffees, and you start to reduce the amount that you're putting in there, do it slow, and it's going to take a couple of weeks for your to adjust. When that coffee starts to taste like it's normal and that you're happy with it, then you can reduce it again. So that's the same as with anything. Um, Ultimately, we don't want to be having tons of fruits, tons of breads, tons of pastas. These things were not supposed to be eaten 365 days. They're supposed to be eaten sporadically, okay? And sporadic is not part of our lifestyle. Sporadic is something that we have once in a while, okay? So yeah, you can have fruits regularly, but it's not generally the same fruit all the time. In the summer here in North America, we should be eating a lot of berries. And then as we get into the fall, it should change into apples and grapes. Then as we get into winter, we generally shouldn't be eating a lot of fruits. Okay? That's when we should be looking more towards our tuber vegetables, right? Because during the summer, when we have the fruits available, that's when we should be eating more of our greens, our leafy greens. So if we follow, our environment, we're more in tune with making sure that we're not having anything way too much. So anyway, next week I'm going to start to talk about how you can use different foods to replace some other common foods you like. So we're going to talk about maybe spiralizing vegetables and some of my forays into the world of pasta alternatives. Some of them were awesome and some of them were not awesome. So I'd like to warn you about which ones you may not want to try. Anyway, have a great night and thanks. Bye.